Located between the Indian and Pacific Oceans, Indonesia is a country made up of over 17,000 islands and is classified by the United Nations as the largest of only 6 archipelago nations in the world. The expansive number of islands fall into the greater groupings of Sumatra, Kalimantan, Sulawesi, Java, and Papua. Covering a total land area of almost 2 million square kilometers, Indonesia is the 16th largest country with a diverse geographic landscape of volcanoes, coastal plains, swamplands, coral reefs, and rainforests. Indonesia is the 4th most populous country in the world with nearly 261 million people. This population is divided among multiple ethnic groups, with the Javanese and Sundanese as the 2 largest. Indonesia is home to the largest Muslim population in the world, but with the constitutional right of freedom of religion, Christianity, Hinduism, and Buddhism, among others, are also practiced. The official language is Bahasa Indonesia, however more than 700 languages are spoken throughout the country. Even with so much diversity present among the people of Indonesia, a focus of unity is at the country's core. With a motto, Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, which means unity in diversity, President Obama described Indonesia as an example to the world and an essential player in the 21st century.
Those things that I learned to love about Indonesia, that spirit of tolerance that's written into your Constitution, symbolized in mosques and churches and temples standing alongside each other. That spirit that's embodied in your people, that still lives on. Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, unity in diversity.
Indonesia is a country with a rich historical background that is essential to understand when looking towards the development of the country and the formation of the current economic system. The Dutch colonized Indonesia as the Dutch East Indies Company during the 17th century. Taking advantage of the rich resources and fertile soil as well as the location in the southern hemisphere, the Dutch gradually created a colonial empire through trade of high-valued goods. As time ruling the colony passed, the Dutch became more involved in the political and economic realm of the island. The cultivation system was put into place, requiring the Indonesian people to pay a land rent to the Dutch government, or a fifth of the produced crops from their arable land. This system increased export revenues for the Dutch, but amplified societal inequalities. As the system came under attack, the liberal policy was introduced, which allowed European investors to obtain long-term leases from Indonesian landholders. Leasing rather than purchasing was chosen to keep the Indonesian population from being alienated from their land. The new policy allowed more capital to flow directly into the Indonesian economy rather than back to the Netherlands, which ultimately increased export revenues and diversified exports to include industrial raw materials. As the Dutch government shifted into a new administration, the ethical policy was introduced in Indonesia, providing welfare assistance for the educational and health sectors, as well as stimulating economic growth through the agricultural sector. Although little growth actually followed this policy, more of the population had access to education, which paved the way for major changes within society. In the early 20th century, resistance to Dutch rule occurred. Under the leadership of Sukarno, a new nationalist party was formed. However, unlike the ideologically based groups in previous years, Sukarno's approach was simply to unite the Indonesian people with thinking geared towards independence from colonial rule. Several years of success for the party were followed by Sukarno's arrest and exile, and the forced cooperation between nationalist leaders and the Dutch governments. In 1942, during World War II, the East Indies fell to Japanese occupation, ending Dutch rule. The Japanese opened opportunities for the Indonesian people, and Sukarno was released from exile and given a military administration position, allowing him to establish himself as the leader of the emerging country. In August of 1945, Indonesia was declared an independent republic. However, following World War II, the Dutch reasserted their power over Indonesia, but officially transferred sovereignty in 1949. Under Sukarno's leadership in the years following independence, he looked toward Indonesian self-sufficiency rather than obtaining help from foreign investors. This type of policy approach led to political instability and low economic growth rates. In 1967, a new president, Suharto, was put into power. Under his presidency, Indonesia rejoined the United Nations and participated in the creation of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. Suharto also created and implemented a new economic development plan that helped Indonesia begin paying off foreign debts, allowed foreign aid to come back into the country, and stabilize the rupiah. Indonesia's exports also increased within the manufacturing and raw materials sectors. Suharto relied heavily on both bureaucratic and military control, resembling authoritarian governance. Various policy approaches, as well as issues among ethnic groups in the islands, contributed to uprisings in various cities. However, his time in power allowed both a new business class and a new middle class, although very diverse, to emerge within society. Hosting 2 Asian African conferences, increasing participation within the Association of Southeast Asian Nations and the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, Indonesia became a dominant player in the Asia-Pacific region throughout the 80s and 90s. Unfortunately, the late 90s brought about the Asian economic crisis, and Indonesia became the hardest-hit country in the region.
In a rash of bankruptcies and currency devaluations, Asia's economic miracle was over.
Across Southeast Asia, stock markets were down 3% in Malaysia, 4% in Thailand, 5% in Indonesia.
Change in exchange rates that have been as high as 80%. You've had an impact on stock markets of up to 60%. When you have a crisis like that, there's no way of saying that's a minor event. It is a major event. And it is causing people to lose their jobs, and it is destabilizing society.
In the years following the Asian economic crisis from 1998 to 2004, Indonesia was led by 4 different presidents. These included Suharto, Habibie, Wahid, and Sukarno Putri. The public focus began to turn more towards freedom of the press, the development of democratic political systems, and strong law enforcement. Under the presidency of Sukarno Putri, Indonesia became more involved in the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, which focused on the economic development, social progress, and cultural development among Southeast Asian countries. During the election of 2004, Sukarno Putri lost to Yudhoyono, who served 2 terms. During this time, Indonesia faced several natural disasters, including an earthquake, a tsunami, and a volcanic eruption. Despite these events, however, Yudhoyono succeeded in improving both the economic and political stability of Indonesia during his time in office. In 2014, a new face among Indonesia's political world, Jokowi Widodo, was elected as president. Known as the man of the people, Widodo grew up on the slums of the river and worked his way up to his current presidential position.
This is where I come from, and this is where I was born.
Although Indonesia has seen tremendous economic growth in the last decade, 10.9% of the population still live below the poverty line.
Tengah perkembangan yang ada saat ini, inilah kampung saya dan inilah rumah saya. Mereka tidak merasakan hal yang sama gitu, bahwa pertumbuhan itu seiring pertumbuhan dengan pertumbuhan ekonomi bagi mereka ya. Bisa dibilang ya agak cukup tinggi lah ya jarak antara si yang kaya ya punya modal dengan mereka yang masyarakat di bawah gitu. Untuk menutupi kehidupan sehari-hari saja mereka sudah sulit gitu.
Menurut saya penyebab utama dari kemiskinan di Indonesia adalah tingkat pendidikan yang rendah, sehingga banyaknya pengangguran. Nah, banyaknya pengangguran inilah yang menyebabkan tidak meratanya kesejahteraan masyarakat di Indonesia.
Menurut saya yang paling utama itu adalah karena tingginya kesenjangan sosial. Itu karena adanya kesejahteraan yang tidak merata antar penduduk di Indonesia.
In an effort to combat these issues, Widodo's economic policy plan consists of reducing fuel subsidies, improving infrastructure, and reforming bureaucracies to reduce and eliminate corruption.
You have been very successful. You have trillions of new rupiah in your treasury by reducing and removing the fuel subsidies.
Yeah.
This looks like some of your infrastructure.
Oh, yeah.
Is that what is it that you want to do with this money?
We want to channel our fuel subsidy to the productive activity, to build our infrastructure, to improve the irrigation for the farmer, seed and fertilizers to the farmer, and then we give the boat engine to the fisherman. We give refrigerator to the fisherman, and we give working capital to the small and micro enterprise in the villages. So, from the consumption to the production, from the consumptive activity to the productive activity. So
that's a change.
Yeah. So we changed totally.
As the largest economy in Southeast Asia, a member of the G20, and categorized as a newly industrialized country, Indonesia is currently ranked 8th in the world with a $3.2 trillion GDP and purchasing power parity. Indonesia is currently in the third phase of the 20-year development plan through the implementation of President Widodo's new policies and focus on the reduction of inequality through social assistance programs and the expansion of infrastructure. As a politically stable country and a key center of economic growth, Indonesia has and will continue to serve as an essential player in the global economy.